1.4, solve absolute value equations. We've been working with some simple absolute value equations, and we're going to finish up this lesson today. Absolute value is about the distance from 0. How far is 7 from 0? It is 7 units away. How far is negative 12 from 0? It would be 12 units from 0. Distance cannot be negative. Problem C, first you need to evaluate the absolute value, and then you need to carry the sign along with your answer. The absolute value of 3 is 3, but because I have a negative sign out front being multiplied to the absolute value, I need to take that negative sign and multiply it to my answer. The absolute value of negative 9 is 9, and I still have that negative out front that I need to put in front of my answer. Example 1, evaluate the expression negative 4, the absolute value of negative 4 minus the absolute value of 2x if x equals 6. I know what x is. I'm going to substitute it in the problem. We're going to start simplifying what's inside of our absolute values. Remember that we're still following the order of operations. And parentheses are about grouping symbols, so that doesn't mean just parentheses. That means the absolute value, a square root, a division bar. These are all grouping symbols. We need to start simplifying inside of the grouping symbols. There's nothing to simplify on the inside of this one. 2 times 6 is 12. And now we need to finish evaluating those absolute values. The absolute value of negative 4 is 4 units from 0 minus the absolute value of 12 is 12 units from 0. And 4 minus 12 is going to be negative 8. Again, we're going to substitute in our x and y values. We have 2 times negative 4. That's the absolute value, minus the absolute value of 3 times 3. We're going to start by simplifying what's on the inside. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. We have the absolute value of negative 8. 3 times 3 is 9, so we have the absolute value of 9. And then we finish evaluating those absolute values before we move on to anything else. The absolute value of negative 8 is 8, subtracting. The absolute value of 9 is 9. And our final answer is negative 1. Solving absolute value equations. We need to take and have the absolute value set equal to the number and set equal to the opposite of that number. Here's our absolute value. We have just the absolute value. It's completely isolated. There's nothing outside of the absolute value happening over here. So we take the absolute value and we set it equal to 17. And then we need to do that again and set it equal to the opposite of 17. 2x minus 3 equals negative 17. That is how you set up your absolute value problems. You're always going to have 2 answers for absolute value. Solve your 2-step equations. Add 3 to both sides. And then finish by undoing the multiplication with division. We get x equals 10. We're going to solve this 2-step equation. Negative 17 plus 3 is negative 14. And divide by 2, we get x equals negative 7. And now we're going to check our solutions. Did I get the right answers? I start by writing down the original. The absolute value of 2x minus 3 equals 17. Write down the original for both of them. We're checking our solution. We got x equals 10 on the first one, so I'm going to substitute that in. 2 times 10 minus 3. And I'm going to substitute in -7 on my second check. 2 times -7 minus 3. And then we need to simplify. Are there any parentheses in here to simplify? No. Any exponents? No. Any multiplying or dividing? Yes. I start with that first. 2 times 10 is 20. And then we finish our subtraction. 20 minus 3 is 17. And the absolute value of 17 is 17. Check. Our solution was correct. We got the same answer on both sides. This is a true statement. Let's check our second answer when we got -7. We're going to start with multiplying first. 2 times -7 is -14. -14, -3 is -17. And the absolute value of -17 is 17 units from 0. It would be 17. And we got the true solution again. Therefore, I know that my answers, x equals 10, x equals -7, are correct. All right, the last thing that we have to do for solving absolute value equations is what happens when I see something that's being added or subtracted outside of the absolute value? What if something was being multiplied to the absolute value? Before you can set it up into case 1 and case 2, you must isolate the absolute value first. So what's being done to this absolute value? It's being added by 16. I need to put the 16 on the other side. I'm going to do subtract 16, and we're left with the absolute value of 5b plus 9 equals 2 minus 16 is -14. Do we ever get an absolute value that equals a negative number? What is the absolute value of 7? We get 7. What is the absolute value of -7? We get an answer of +7. Will we ever have an absolute value where we end up with a negative answer? That would be no. If there was a negative out front, yes, that's fine. But for an absolute value itself, will you ever get a negative answer? No. So how can I have an absolute value right now that equals a negative answer? You can't. This would be no solution. Example 4, again, we have to isolate the absolute value first. Here's my absolute value. And I can see that my absolute value is being multiplied by -5. I need to undo that. I'm going to divide this side by -5, divide this side by -5, keeping the equation balanced by doing the same thing to both sides. My -5 in the numerator is canceling with my -5 in the denominator. And I'm left with the absolute value of 6a plus 2 equals -15 divided by -5 is a +3. Don't get tricked. Just because you saw an absolute value that equals a negative number doesn't mean that that would be true after we isolate it. Now that it's isolated and I can see that I have a positive answer, I'm going to set it up. Case 1, 6a plus 2 equals 3. In case 2, 6a plus 2 equals -3. We're doing the opposite of 3. Solving this two-step equation. Don't think this equals 6. Keep going. Follow through. The opposite of multiplying by 6 is dividing by 6. We get a equals 1/6. Solving the second equation. divide by 6, and we get A equals negative 5, 6. And again, if you were taking a quiz or a test, you could check your solutions.